Welcome to the Teachers on Fire podcast, where I profile agents of growth and transformation in education today. Each guest shares their highs, their lows, their passions, their goals, and the resources that are shaping their thinking and inspiring their practice. For show notes and links from each episode, visit teachersonfire.net. You can also follow the show at Teachers on Fire on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, please subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm your host, Tim Cavey. Let's meet today's guest. Today, I'm speaking with Rose Pillay. Rose is an education leader, curriculum consultant, and a prolific writer. Her one word for 2019 is smile, and I can affirm that Rose keeps a lot of educators smiling and inspired on a daily basis. Follow Rose on Twitter at RosePillay1 and visit her blog at teachafl.wordpress.com. Rose, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk education?
Good morning, Tim. And yes, I am. Let's go for it.
Awesome. Well, you're smiling already. So
how do you know? Can you hear it? Can you hear it through the microphone?
I think I can. So, Rose, why don't you start by filling in any of the gaps I left out? Tell us a little bit more about your current context in education.
Okay, so Tim, I'm from Vancouver, and I'm working in the superintendent's office of the Catholic Independent Schools of the Vancouver Archdiocese. That means that I am supporting, serving, and celebrating the K-12 Catholic schools in Metro Vancouver, from Chilliwack through to the North Shore, all the way to Powell River. And my current portfolio is in curriculum implementation. But if I was going to tell you in a nutshell what I do on a daily basis for a living, is I find myself to play three roles. I'm privileged to be a professional learner. I know that I'm an educator and I know that I'm a consultant, but I get paid to learn for a living. And what I'm learning is what is best for our students. And so I get a chance to go to all sorts of professional development and bring that back to the teachers who don't get as many opportunities to leave their classroom and stretch themselves. So I'm a professional learner. The second thing I do is my role is to be a professional gossip, or good news gossip, in the nicest way, though, right? When I visit with schools, my job is to see what's good, and then I just pass it around. I go to another school and go, so-and-so's been doing this. So I gossip in the nicest way, so that teachers who may be even sitting beside each other in a school setting can have a chance to look inside and what they're doing. I used to do something called Peeping Tom Prody. I know it sounds weird, but when I was teaching in high school, I would spend my one of my spares just to look in and out of teachers' classrooms and see what they were doing, see any tricks I could pick up or ideas and things that we're doing. And my best Prody was actually looking through windows and seeing what teachers are doing, because you know how some people are. Some teachers are a bit not like they're shy to let people into their space, right? So I've looked through windows. So I'm a good news gossip. But the role that I love playing is edu-match. And so I love being a matchmaker for teachers, because of all the resources I can bring back to somebody. It's another person, somebody that understands what they're going through, somebody who is walking in their shoes, sharing similar stories, having similar struggles. And if I can match teachers up with other teachers and help facilitate conversations with them, I think that's going to be a win-win in terms of their own professional growth. So I'm an edu matchmaker, I'm a professional gossip, and a professional learner, and I get paid for this. Tim.
Living the dream, Rose. Living the dream.
Am I not living the dream? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Now, the reason why I was really, I would say, stoked to be on your podcast is that this I'm living the dream. Sometimes it's quite loud. Sometimes you can actually visualize how I live this dream out. But my coworkers, they're so lovely and supportive. And so a while back ago, they gave me my own nameplate that they created. They took my name Rose and they set it on fire, like on graphics, right? And so they photoshopped my name and they stuck it to my my desktop, because I'm always on fire. And so every once in a while, when they see me buzzing around, they'll start to like spray fake fire extinguishers at me. just like, Rose, you're a little bit too much, right? You're too excited about what you're doing. But I can't, I'm just very much, I feed off the energy, the positivity of other people around me. And it's very, let's just say it does ignite me. And so they gave me my own theme song. This girl is on fire. Like, so it's not my own, but I know. And so they play it once in a while. And then apart from the fake fire extinguisher, they also gave me a little tiny mascot. It was a little tiny monkey dressed up as a fireman. So
Oh
just
my
in case.
goodness.
But yeah, but so that's me on a daily basis. It's just, I thrive off of other people's excitement and joy. And if I could just fan their flames, I think I'm doing my job well then.
Well, thanks to you, Rose, I'm going to have Alicia Keys going through my head for the rest of this interview. But I
Yes.
agree. I think it was meant to be. And I love that reference.
Yeah, I know your people can't see it, but yeah, it's so cool. Every once in a while, they'll just douse me because it's a little bit too much, but it's all good.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, we're off to a good start and I'm smiling already. And you've given me so much to think about just there. And absolutely, paid to learn is such a great way to look at that. That's a fun approach, I think, to the work that you do. Now, it's story time, Rose. Share with us about a low moment or an experience of adversity that you faced somewhere along your teaching or education journey. And then, most importantly, how you overcame it.
So when this was actually, I believe, the last question of the set that I wanted to answer, because I thought to myself, what I want to present and project and place into this world is a lot of positivity. And so this particular question about low moments, I go, okay, I don't think he has that much time to listen to me. And that might be more of a therapy session than an actual podcast session. But I think the way that I'd like to frame it is, I'm sure your listeners are familiar with Taylor Molley, the teacher and poet from Brooklyn.
Okay.
And he wrote this lovely poem called "What Do Teachers Make?" And his one sentence response was, "Teachers make a difference." And I will be honest, there are days that I feel I have not made a difference, nor am I making a difference. I really struggle with imposter syndrome. I can't name every single moment or low experience, but what they share in common is this debilitating doubt that I chose the wrong career path. And I think I think a lot of us suffer from that. But every once in a while, you get that reminder that comes out of the blue. People say out of the blue or providential, or it's not just a coincidence or serendipity. Like there's things that come back to say, no, you're on the right track. So those doubts are good. They're not healthy to keep festering within us. But what I do to overcome those doubts, what I do to overcome that imposter syndrome is I try to bolster my immunity against insecurity, inadequacy, and negativity. And I make a conscious choice to actually curate and keep any and all, and there's not a lot, but all the comments, cards, and collectibles that are affirming and empowering. And I actually have on my email a little a folder that says sunshine. So I actually move any positive message that comes my way. I send it in there, and I actually do have a box of blessings that sit open on my office desktop, and sometimes if it's collectibles, it's almost like there's a shrine
Right.
that is building, and I have to stop people from giving me trinkets because I will tell you, I am just one box away from being a hoarder. Like I'm pretty sure I'll be profiled one day when I pass away, but I hoard people's trinkets. People are so kind and so good, and like there have been people who've left me kind little post-it notes and sadly, Tim, that I've kept. These are post-it notes, but I keep these affirmations because they're reminders. These expressions of gratitude are reminders that I've made a difference, and I think I have to remember I can't win them all, but those that I have to celebrate and cherish, right? So that's one way that I do it on a daily basis. But I actually will go out and I'm very proactive in seeking out and being with people who not only cheer me on, but actually challenge me to be better. So you will see me anywhere where there's a group of people who are gathering and celebrating and talking about the positives of being an educator. Those who I love Ignites, I love TEDx's, I love Ed Camps. I just love being around the energy of people who are uplifting. I mean, I've left some quotes when I was talking about when I was thinking about it, and the one that really sticks with me is from Wilford A. Peterson. He goes, walk with the dreamers, the believers, the courageous, the cheerful, the planners, the doers, the successful people with their head in the clouds and their feet on the ground. Let their spirit ignite a fire within you to leave this world better. I find being around people that fan my flames are it's very healthy for me. Like you have to be around people. Everything we do in teaching is relational, and we want our students to build happy, healthy relationships. And I think we have to model the same, and to go out there and to be with people. That social piece of social media is not lost on me.
Right.
So that's what I do. That's how I actively work against those doubts of those insecurities and imposter syndrome. And the saddest part is, as much as I fear that I'm not making a difference, every day I wake up wanting to, right? And so every day I get to reset and try again. That's the worst that can happen, right?
Oh, so much gold there, Rose. And I
Okay,
love this
you
one.
mine away.
I love the sunshine folder in your inbox. That's something I'm going to have to start. A few years ago, I did something kind of similar, and
Mm-hmm,
I realized, I can't keep all these student cards around. You know how they give you cards at
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Christmas and at the end of the
mm-hmm,
year.
mm-hmm.
And so what I started to do is just snapping pictures of those cards and throwing them in a Google Slides as like a slideshow. And that's my sunshine folder. So I've got something kind of
I
similar,
love that. Oh, that would be
right?
a lovely little project to work on. I do
Yeah,
love that. I don't know, Tim. It's not. I guess it's not about a boast or a brag. It's just. I think it's a bolster. I think it's a.
totally.
It's just. I think we have to recognize that what we do is such hard work, and every once in a while, when you do get that affirmation, it's enough that should charge you up to come back again the next day, right? So I keep it there to recharge myself every once in a while.
Awesome. Awesome. I know a lot of teachers have sort of a pump up wall by their desk, and absolutely we have
That's
we
cool.
have we have dark days. We have days where we
Yeah.
really doubt ourselves, and I love what you said about education being a relational profession. That's so good. Rose, you passionately serve the educators of the Catholic independent schools in the Greater Vancouver area, and you've built strong relationships with educators across all faiths and the public school districts as well. It's really amazing to see. So, tell me, how does your faith inform your work in education, and how does it help you build relationships with other educators?
So, Tim, this question, what gave me the greatest pause, even though the former one was the one that it took me so long to write or to reflect on. I do know that one day I want to perhaps do a thoughtful blog post on it, but I can give you some of my initial reactions to your question. It does continue to amaze me how my relationship with educational professionals on either side of the funding fence or the rung on a ladder is a point of curiosity for people. I think I want to begin first by defining my faith. So I am Catholic, and my faith then defines who I am, the decisions I make, and the direction I take in this life. So being baptized means I am called, I am tasked, I am challenged to bring Jesus into this world. And as such, my life and how I live it should be a lighthouse for others. I was going to use a very not so appropriate description for this, but there is that scene in Harry Met Sally, and we'll just leave it there. And the lady sitting at their other countertops goes, I'll have what she's having. I want people to look at my life and the way that I am living it and say to themselves, I want what she's having. She's living authentically, unashamed, and unapologetic. I'm not living to be accepted, but I'm living to be authentic to who I'm called to be. And so I find myself, I'm witnessing always, and I'm using words when necessary. I know everyone knows that I'm Catholic, but I can't tell you how grateful I am that no matter which door I go knocking on, which person I go asking for help, that people are out there and they're assisting me and they're helping me, because independent or public, I believe that we're working towards a common end, preparing our students not just to live in our changing world, but to actually and hopefully, really, really prayerfully, I hope that they will change the world for the better. And I think we're all in it for the same reasons. I just know that my end goal is for that afterlife as well. But I think my role is to work with them. And so this idea of sharing and this idea of going out there and seeking the best resources. Like, I am relentlessly pursuing what in my faith we call true, good, and beautiful, for the sake of making students into saints. And my favorite definition of saints is by Thomas Merton. He says, for me to be a saint means to be myself. Therefore, the problem of sanctity and salvation is in fact the problem of finding out who I am and discovering my true self. And I believe that that's what we want in education here in BC. We've moved from the old tradition of transmission of information to, I really believe, transformation and identity transformation. We're actually trying to not just look at students as a product, but as people. And and what people do we want? Not what ranking do we want to achieve? Not what, like ranking in a PISA or whatever, right? We're actually trying to define a person and the very best qualities of what it means to be human and to be people who are not just contributing to this world, but actually making a better place by being here, right? And so when I find myself with this need to help all teachers and help all my students, I'm actually living by two things. I'm trained by the golden rule.
Right.
So do unto others. So when I go and I approach my my public school counterparts or anybody, I go there out of respect. And I I mean, sorry for stumbling. I'm trying to make
No, it's fine.
put words to this, but that you're going to edit. I know you. Thank you so much for editing. But Tim, it's very much that, you know, I approach people at not face value, but from my heart, and I look at them, and if I ask, I hope that they will answer. Like, there's the Matthew 7:7. It actually could be my modus operandi as an educational consultant. Matthew 7:7 is, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. So when it comes to being an educational consultant, I realize there's only one of me, but there's so many more of us out there. My role is just, I go out there and I ask for help and I seek it and I knock, and I'm relentless with that, right? So when people do respond to me, I'm just so grateful. But I just think that I'm not out there to be accepted. I'm just out there hopefully to make their lives better and to contribute to, I think our common goal is to help students change this world, right? Does that make sense a little bit?
Totally. And, you know, the funny thing about making our mission service is that people tend to like us.
Yes,
You know,
yes, they do. They very
generosity
much do.
is attractive. And I think you live that out quite well.
Thank you.
So
And I
that's,
wanted, oh, sorry,
no,
Tim. I
no,
just
go
wanted
ahead.
to, that generosity, it blows my mind. There are things that I have done. I remember my my office manager, she's always putting me to shame in that, Rose, you never pay for any of your protein. I go, I know, people are very generous. I'm like getting, like, it's like I get invitations to so many things, and it's just, I'm humbled by it. I'm honored by it. I'm humored by it. I'm just so grateful that people are so willing to share. And I think this compulsion, this generosity, I think is fueled a lot by what I've heard Pope Francis write about. He writes about to educate is to transform, and he speaks about networking. And he writes, only by changing education can we change the world. I think we share that in common, public, independent, any faith-based. We want to change the world, and we're going to change it through education. To this end, he offers a surprising first suggestion, and I'm just going to quote a little bit from his article. First, it is important to network. And that just blew me away. It's like, now I am commissioned by the Pope to network.
Right.
And he defines networking as, networking means creating spaces for encounter and dialogue within educational institutions and encouraging similar spaces outside our institutions with other people of other cultures, other traditions, other religions, so that a Christian humanism can consider the overall reality of humanity today. My job is to go and encounter all of those voices to get a greater, bigger, more beautiful picture of what it means to be human. And so for me to network, I think I'm being tasked by Pope Francis. So the generosity of all of my colleagues, no matter where we are on either side of that fence, is just helping fuel this. And it actually just makes sense to me. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it through relationship and being honest and open with each other.
Rose, let's go a little bit off script here. And just on that last point about networking and relationships, what do you say? You must talk to teachers about, engaging and expanding their PLN and even Twitter, which I know you're a big fan of. So how do you sell Twitter to the educators that you're working with? What's your message?
You know what? I've been on Twitter for what? I think this 7 years or something to that effect. And for me, it's not about Twitter per se. Like Twitter for me satisfies both my need for community and my need for access to the best resources, the 24/7 access to people's classrooms, to innovative practices, to inspiration per se, right? That's how I get it. And there's other sources like through reading, through books, journals, going to Prodi, right? When I approach teachers when it comes to social media, for them, all I say is do something, find something that's going to recharge your batteries, find people that are going to feed you, fuel you, give enough so that you can go back and give more of yourself, right? And so I always tell them is if it's not Twitter, it's got to be something else. You've got to have something else that's going to feed you and continue to push you and to grow. I don't want teachers to be stagnant in their practice. I don't want myself to be stagnant, always pushing, right? The reason why I went on Twitter is that many years ago, I was in the office. It was just before lunch, and one of the associate superintendents was having a difficult time um, promoting a new job that was open for one of our French language schools, right? And she just passed by me, and she goes, I need to get the word out that there's this position open. And all we were doing at the time, we had newsletters, we had email, and we had like a website, right? But they didn't know. And so I said to them, I know something called Twitter. Now, I thought, okay, seriously, Tim, I knew nothing. I zero about Twitter. So I said to her, let me see what I can do. Tim, no lie. I took my lunch hour, went with my computer to a very, very private spot and thought, what is Twitter? So I actually Googled Twitter. I signed up as an egg, did not know because a part of me that's both a flaw and a blessing is that I will not admit to not knowing something yet. So it's like I will go and I got onto Twitter within that hour, and my very first post was, hey, there's a job opening, and then it's like crickets, right? And that's where it began. And then all of a sudden I thought, oh, this is so neat. I wonder who else is out there. So I started thinking to myself, well, I read this journal. I wonder if this person is active on Twitter, right? So I started following Rick Wormley, and then on and on and on and on it goes. And they responded. And I will tell you, there was a time where Chris Weeger, I don't know if you know Chris Weeger. He's also he's someone else that you should follow, Chris Weeger. So Dr. Dylan William was coming to Vancouver, right? And so I had tweeted something with his name, tagged him in it, and then Chris was also, and then Dr. William actually replied to both Chris and I, and then we both geeked out at the same time, and we went direct messaged ourselves. I go, oh my goodness. It was so crazy. Like here we are in this, like we're like peons in this place, right? And here's Dr. Dylan William, who's like the godfather of assessment for learning, who has responded to us. I don't even remember what his response was, but he knew that we existed, right? So all of these relations, and all of a sudden it just spiraled from there and it just blew up my world, and it made me a little bit more confident to go out there and seek more. Go out there and seek more resources and more people, and it's amplified my role or my work as a consultant. If I did not have Twitter, I don't know if I could be as effective as I am right now.
Rose, 2019 marks your 10th year of blogging. Can you believe it? At teachafl.wordpress.com. So congratulations to you for that. After so much work, learning, and so many written reflections, what would you like educators to know about assessment for learning? And I'm assuming here that the AFL in Teach AFL stands for Assessment for Learning. You already mentioned Dylan William. So can you boil it down to a couple of key ideas? What should educators know?
Okay. So first of all, thank you for clarifying that it was assessment for learning as an AFL. My brother, when he first saw the WordPress title, he read it as teach awful.
Oh no.
It's like, I am not espousing that, Gabe. My brother, you'll meet later on, right? But
Right.
it goes, not teach awful, it's teach AFL. It goes, Rose, it sounds weird. And it's like, no, it's the total opposite. Before I answer that one question, to boil it down into some simple ideas, a little bit of an origin story as to why that blog came to be and how it's actually evolved.
Yeah.
So I did a summer retreat with Ann Davies and Sandra Herbst. They were my first encounter with the term assessment for learning. Now, being an educator, you know how you just do things out of practice and tradition and how you were taught. So I never had names for things that I was doing. We like the whole summative and formative and assessment of and assessment for and assessment as. I just do not recall that from my PDP days as an educator. So, but to know that I had some practices that were aligned with those terms, I mean, is quite refreshing and affirming. But I went to a retreat with Ann Davies and Sandra Herbst, and soon after that summer retreat, I was tasked, whatever you want to say, to lead an inter-school professional learning community between our high schools that were focused on assessment for learning to help them go through the same evolution, to have the same epiphany. So to go from philosophy to practice. So I gathered together this amazing group of high school educators that I am just, there are some people you bask in their glow. They're so amazing at what they do. They don't even know it. And that was the most lovely part about being with them, is I got to put words to their practice and say, yes, that's what you're doing, right? So they came together, and at the time, the WordPress blog Teach AFL, it was basically an online filing cabinet. And so that's where I would just dump stuff as a virtual reservoir for resources and research. It's because my own CISVA website couldn't house it because of whatever conditions or policies that we had in place. So I had to create another place to house all of their work, right? So their work and all the reading and research. I mean, this is where we've encountered persons like Joe Bauer, the late Joe Bauer, rest in peace, the teacher from Alberta who really set us on fire with assessment for learning. So, I mean, it became just a place to house how we were moving ourselves from philosophy to practice. But in June 2012, I wrote a post called Fail Better. And I began writing reflections on teachable moments I was encountering. And it was inspired by Samuel Beckett's quote, "Ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better." And I go, that's what I do on a daily basis. So I went from helping teachers improve their own practice to saying, wait a second, why am I not applying assessment for learning to my own professional practice? So I started applying the three basic questions for assessment for learning. Where am I now? Where am I going? And how will I get there? And I thought, why am I witnessing somebody else's journey? Why don't I take my own journey and see where my own growth is as a learner? So since I didn't have a traditional classroom of students, what was I continuing to learn about being a teacher from everyday life experiences? So 2012, with the post Fail Better, I started writing differently. I started writing more narrative. I started reflecting on those day-to-day moments that some people miss and think, what is this teaching me about what it means to learn, what it means to teach? What does it mean to actually be a better human being, right? And so I started using, through the lens of metaphor, I went searching for stories about the soul of teaching. And as I did that, I realized that I really had taken assessment for learning into my own practice. And so I took to heart the Latin root of the word assessment, assidere, to sit beside. And so all of those stories since 2012, my blog post became tributes to all the teachers who've been accompanying me, who've been sitting with me in my practice and helping me on my journey. So it became, for me, I changed the title of my blog post unceremoniously to Fail Better every day. So now this assessment for learning, Teach AFL, has become more of a reflection on my own growth. And I've realized the more and more that I understand what it means to learn, what it means to teach, the more and more I'm learning about what does it mean to have good relationships? What does it mean to have good conversations? What does it mean to create community? All those things, because school, it's helping me redefine school, helping me redefine education. And for that new theme, Fail Better, Dr. Dylan William, I think, said it the best. And if you don't mind, can I just read something that he said, Tim? Okay. He says the following. Every single teacher needs to accept 2 commitments. One, that they have to carry on improving their practice as long as they work in schools. The most important question to ask teachers: do you need to improve? If they say yes, work with them. If they say no, fire them. That's a joke. That's a joke. Number 2, focus on the things that make the most difference to students. Embrace the idea that the job of teaching is so difficult, we never really get good at it. Every month, every year, achieve a personal best. We fail every day, but every day we can come back the next day and fail better. And that's just it, though, knowing that I can never be so good, right? Like, I can be better. Every day I can be better. And that's what I want to present in this blog. And then I apply the rules, the process of assessment for learning to help myself. What have I learned about myself in terms of where I am as a learner, where am I going as a learner, and how can I help myself get there? And so that how has been translated into multiple opportunities to, go to different forms of Pro D, engage in different conversations, be part of different communities, build all sorts of relationships.
I really love this conversation. I think about those 3 big questions of where am I now, where am I going, and how will I get there? And I think that language of metacognition and student engagement is spreading across K-12 education. But maybe the next level is, and I think you model this well, how are we participating in that same metacognitive process as educators? How are we writing and reflecting? We want our students to do that. We want our students to do more reflecting. And in my context, we're using Seesaw for a lot of that. But how are we as educators staying involved in that learning process as well? Something Rose models really, really well on her blog that I would like to follow at some point. I don't want to put a date on this because that's too much pressure, but something you model that I really appreciate is that after a conference, you sit down with your notes and you synthesize your thoughts and you basically give a report. And I know that report is mostly for you. I mean, you're publishing it to share the information, but just that journey, that experience of processing what you learned,
right,
and putting that together, it sort of forces us to rethink all of those gems. And I think a lot of us are good at taking notes, and some are even starting to sketch note live, which is really, really cool. But we have to be sure to follow that up, right, and cement that learning.
So I think as you're sharing there, Tim, it reminds me of this, and I've got it embedded in my notes here in front of me, by the late Richard Wagamese. He wrote this book, and it's a book that I'm recommending for everyone. It's called Embers, and he has this lovely quote about what it means to write, and he says, "Don't just write what you know, write what you wish to know. What you reveal to yourself, you reveal to the reader. Storytelling is about discovery." And I think that is bang on. I don't write for others. I really simply write so that, considering my age, that I remember something. Like, I can always back, oh yeah, that's what I did. It's to see what have I grown with this, right? And so I just find writing to be a way for me to demonstrate my own learning, but also to show my growing as a person. And I really do write for myself. And so you will see, and if somebody actually read all 10 years of blog of all of my posts, they will see my writing transition into much more narrative form, only because I'm telling myself my story, right? And because I'm a Catholic, and I think most Catholics can pick up on my structure of my narratives, so as a Catholic, when we go to church every Sunday, we get something called like a homily, where a priest comes up and they kind of tell us like the gist of the readings and then how it applies to our life, right? So I've taken that to heart. It's almost like a homily. And I try to follow Pope Francis's rule of threes. Like, Pope Francis was a teacher, right? So he has this rule of threes. If you can't say it in three 3 ideas, then move on, right? So I like his rule of 3. So I love to model my writing after how I hear stuff in church and how Pope Francis presents his letters to us, right? It's only 3 quick ideas, move on. So that's a little bit about my writing style.
Rose, when you think about your context, you oversee a few dozen schools. So what is it that you are really passionate about in particular?
So in particular, it has to be the redesigned competency-driven curriculum here in BC. It doesn't just excite me; it actually ignites me. Given the transformation that we are slowly seeing in our schools, we're actually seeing I feel that there's much more joy in our schools because of this new curriculum, and I think it has a lot to do in because it's a deliberate attempt at creating, crafting, writing a curriculum that's for all students to be successful. I've never I know that school is there for achievement, but how do you define achievement? And we've defined it by such narrow terms, like it's the academic results, it's the percentage, it's the letter grade. But is that how we define achievement for everyone? And it's because we're redefining achievement for all students. I can now see where assessment practices can help us achieve those goals. And I just have a really quick little story, if you don't mind, Tim,
Sure.
about this, why I love this concept of all students. So many years ago, I had a chance to go to a conference that I knew Dr. Dylan William of Assessment for Learning was going to be presenting at. So I went just to stalk the poor man, and that's another side story for another day. But I ended up going to a session that he was going to be at. So I sat in the row behind him, and he was sitting near to the front of the auditorium. And there was a woman presenting on assessment for learning practices, and Dr. Williams' back was turned to me, and he was sitting there typing away and listening and learning. And all I was doing was wondering, what is he typing and learning, right? I was just like, what is he possibly writing? He wrote the book on this, right? She's probably referencing the book. So I'm actually seated behind him, and I can barely see the stage from where I am. There's a huge speaker blocking the screen, and the lady on stage is going through her top 10 of assessment for learning. Why should we be bringing this into our school? So she's going 10, 9. She's going through a countdown, and then she gets to number 1, and I have a speaker that is blocking half of the screen, and she goes, and this is number 1, and the whole audience just gasps. And I don't know what they're looking at. So I look straight up, and I see on the screen, and this is what I see on the screen. In this school, and then the second line is 11 students can learn. And that's what I'm reading, is in this school, 11 students can learn. I go, why is that a good thing? I don't want 11 and my mind is like, why are there only 11 students learning in this school? And why is this a good thing to say? And who are those 11 students? And how do you decide who? This is in my mind. Not real. And there was that moment where I did not realize that the speaker was blocking the most important letter
A.
of the sentence. It was the letter A. The sentence was actually, in this school, all students can learn. And that A was assessment for me. If we put assessment into your practice, then you are actually holding to what we always say this, we want all students to learn. Well, put your money where your mouth is, and let's put assessment back into our instructional practices so that we are now we're all teaching for all students to grow, all students to get better, all students to be learners, all students to be those lifelong learners that we write in our application to PDP, right? So I took a photograph of that 11 students, right? And actually I keep it with me. It's in my binder, so I'd never forget that I'm in it for all students to learn. I'm not in it just for those 11 students. And by whatever narrow description of achievement that is, though, right? Just this morning, you had tweeted out over the weekend about the Vancouver schools who are going gradeless. And then I retweeted it. And for better or for worse, people think I'm the one that now wrote it. No, I did not write it. And so I got this question from a teacher, and it says, "Well, Rose, is there any evidence for this to improve achievement for students, though going gradeless?" But all I can think of is, well, how do you define achievement? What does achievement mean to you? And is it for what students? And what do you mean Like, how are you defining students? How do you find achievement? How do you define grades? How do you define, there's so many other thoughts that come to me. And where I find this new curriculum, it has been so intentional to write it so that all students are successful. I cannot help but love it, because it's not 11 students to be successful in our system. It's all students.
Mm.
And so what I find that's helping create this new vision is the core competencies, so that every student can recognize their strengths and then claim them, not only just for the self-assessment at the end of the year, for the summative, but that they recognize their own growth, that they know their story. Like, I went to a TEDx once, and a lovely young student said, we just don't go to school to learn history, but to know our story.
Mm.
And shouldn't students know their story? Isn't who they are the most important question they should be able to answer in this test of life, right?
Right.
So the core competencies is one, and the other one that excites me is the 8-credit career life education program. It's going to rock the worlds of high schools. That's all I'm going to say. Career life education, it's not your planning 10. It is not grad transitions in any way. It is going to become the sun around which all other courses are going to orbit, because it's that career dash life. How are we as school collectively preparing students not just to have a career and contribute to this world, but to have a life and make a life for themselves? And I just find it's going to cause a lot of excitement, and that's a very gentle word for me, because the excitement is it's going to push back on how do we design timetables and schedules and courses, and prioritizing money and prioritizing budgets and reorganizing departments. We're going to be investing a lot of time and energy in making sure that our students are ready not just to graduate, but to live life. And so I'm excited by that.
Mm.
And in all of this, from the curriculum to the core competencies through to career life education, what excites me the most, the biggest C in all of this, is the cross-pollination of ideas, innovation, inspiration within and between districts. It's as if everyone subscribes to the hashtag sharing is caring, because they're all our kids. Like, seriously, all, not 11 of them, not your 11 and my 2. The collaborations, the conversations, the connections within this ever-expanding, welcoming, province-wide community, it's contagious and is absolutely intoxicating for me. The generosity of people is crazy. And that's grassroots generosity. I don't know how far-reaching it is if you go up the ladder, but I will tell you, I am happy here with what I see happening. So what excites me a lot, and about education a lot more.
That is incredible, and I look forward to the changes that are coming down the road. There's already been so much change here in our jurisdiction, and I know in others, in terms of curriculum involvement, curriculum evolution. And I keep coming back to the phrase you used earlier. We're moving from transmission of information to transformation or formation of young people. And so the holistic education is key.
Mm-hmm.
Rose, how are you looking to grow professionally and improve your practice this year? Can you share about a specific professional goal or an area that you are working on?
My specific professional goal is actually I want to grow as a confident, competent, and creative workshop facilitator, presenter. And for me to do that, it means I need to expose myself to opportunities to see other people do their thing. So it means to attend more professional development with people who are pushing themselves as competent, creative presenters. So I'm going to be going to, shameless plug here, the Canadian Assessment for Learning Network. They're doing their annual symposium /conference /convention in Delta this May. So it's just in my backyard in a way, right? So I want to go there. I want to be able to I want to go and see other people who are doing amazing work as facilitators. I want to go see other facilitators do what they do so that I can add to my own bag of tricks, let's say. So, and that's how I push myself, because I don't have my own classroom. So a need to go out there and seek those places.
Well, if part of the growth mindset is stretching ourselves and putting ourselves in uncomfortable spaces, I think speaking and presenting raises the stakes considerably, doesn't it? And so
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
I love that you are attending the CAFLN conference.
Yes,
That's not easy to
yes.
say.
It's not Canadian Assessment for Learning Network. Yes. Are you going to go to that, Tim? You registered, right?
I just got the green light on Friday, so I'm coming. Yeah, I can't wait.
And this is how geeked out I am about it. It is in Delta and it's not so far away, but to appease my office manager, I said, you know what? The registration was so relatively inexpensive. I go, you know what? I'm going to splurge on a hotel. So I'm going to do a staycation in Delta. And it's like, yes, I know that's not as exciting, but at least I could tell her that I've done something with my own money. So she'll be quite pleased with me. I'll probably bring a postcard from Delta. I'll have to go find something. But why not? Come on, right? You got to enjoy life, right? So all good.
So, Rose, thinking outside of education, tell me about another area of learning for you. What is it that ignites your passions when you leave the school, when you leave your work of education consultancy? Tell us why this area of passion interests you and why you enjoy it.
Okay, so honestly, it's probably the most difficult question for me to answer, in that being a teacher is a calling for me. It defines how I live 24/7. That said, I think I'm always learning from everyone, everything and everywhere. Tim, like here's like when I was actually in the classroom, when I'd come home and I'd be watching let's say some commercial, and my first thought would be like, I wonder how I could use that in my bio class, or I'll be something will just cross my path and I go, oh, how can I use this? Like, it's the saddest yet so awesome, I think, about being a teacher, is that I'm always on the lookout to learn from something or someone or somewhere, right? So I'm always learning. So this idea of what am I passionate about, and with regards to another area of learning, well, I'm learning from everything. But what I love the most, and this is again very, very geeky, and I've already spoken to this, is I love being around people, and going to those places, and that educators are there out of choice. Like, it's not you have those protees where you have to go to because your administrator told you to, and you have to engage in those other, because it's good for the whole community. But I love where people go by choice. And I love those extracurricular protees, like the ed camps, the EdVents, the Ignites, the TEDx's. It's when teachers by choice want to go and learn. And that motivation, that internal motivation, really gives me such a positive charge. I love gathering around. I call them the campfires, these modern day campfires for educators, where we come around, we're in our circles, and we're sharing our stories, feeling the warmth and welcome of community. And shameless plug again, there's going to be a great event happening in April that you're going to be part of, EdVent 2019. I crave that. And a little origin story about this whole EdVent thing. My brother is an educator. My sister-in-law is an educator. It is so sad to have dinner with us, any family member, because it's always like her sister's an educator as well. So whenever, like, Thanksgiving is horrible. When you're sitting here on the table and half of us are educators and we can't stop talking about our kids, and our students and our families and our schools, right? So my brother and I are so passionate about educators and education and letting people share their stories. It's through stories that I think we're growing. It's not just going to be because of a tool or technology. It's just talking to other people and sharing each other's stories. Like Richard Wagamese, the late Richard Wagamese, he writes, we're all storytellers, really. That's what we do. That is our power as human beings, not to tell people how to think and feel and therefore know, but through our stories, allow them to discover questions within themselves. So my brother has created this lovely, and just it's just him, me, and another teacher, and the three of us have, for like the last 4 years, pulled together this event called EdVent, where we just book a bar, like a pub, that sells the best yam fries, by the way, wings in Burnaby. And we bring people together and go, here, share your story, inspire each other, light a fire, fan each other's flames. We just want to bring people together who are just as passionate, so that we ourselves can be recharged. And so we've created this event, and it is a passion project for him. And as his sister, I can't help but fan his flames and help him pull this off, right? So that's what I really get passionate about. And I will spend all of my free time sometimes just wondering how can I make these events better, because the more people I can pull together and create that community, get them to connect with each other, network with each other, the better off it's going to be for all of us. Like, I love creating community, and these events allow us to do that. And as educators, being in a classroom can be so lonely, and they don't have to do this on their own. I think teaching has to be a team sport. And if we can bring them together in this way, so that really is my guilty passion project. It gives me great pleasure to do these things and not only attend them, but to actually host them with my brother. So EdVent 2019 is coming up. I'll send the link.
That is so good. And I don't know, I guess I have mixed feelings about this question, because I think on the one hand, as educators, we do need to diversify. We need to look elsewhere and gain life and energy, but from other sources. But on the other hand, speaking to your point, there's nothing wrong with simply saying I have this orientation to learn. That's what gives me joy. And so wherever I'm deriving learning and growth, that is my passion. And so
Oh, Tim, that's so beautiful. That's exactly what I wanted to say. That's so pretty. You're such a good listener. Thank you. No, seriously, that's beautiful. Yes. Or I'm geeky. I'm just an edgy geek. There you go. I claim it.
speaking of we talked about the bar, booking the bar or the pub for EdVent, and it made me think actually of a conversation I had with AJ Bianco a few episodes back, and he's running a coffee edu, sort of a live coffee tweet and chat, or I don't know if tweeting is involved, but it may be just a sort of an edu chat at his local coffee shop. And that, I think, was originally inspired by Alice Keeler. And so that kind of dynamic is spreading, and that's really fun.
And here's the fun part. My brother and I, we both don't drink. And that's why doing pub-based Pro D is hysterical for me, right? But I do find that I think people are much more receptive when they when they do drink something. It just ignites the fire, right? It's all good. But that's just it though, Tim. When it comes to it's all about conversation. It's all about dialogue, whether it's over coffee or another beverage, or whether it's through a chat. It's those conversations that are going to cause change. I truly believe that. I think it's just person to person that we're going to create this change.
Last question before we get to some of your quick picks, Rose. Share about a personal habit or maybe a productivity hack that contributes to your success. How do you balance it all?
Well, I don't. I think I'm always trying to achieve balance. I don't think I've got there yet. But here's the oddest thing about when I looked at your question though, but about contributing to my success though. In 2017, I heard Catherine Mulskey's TEDx talk. It's called Courage to Say No. So at teaching in the 21st century. So if you look her up, Courage to Say No. Now, here's the weirdest part. So much of my former life was saying no to things because I was always thinking if I add more to my plate, I'm not going to be balanced. So I was saying no to so many opportunities. So Catherine does this great talk called Courage to Say No. So I was inspired to actually say, you know what? I need to have the courage to say yes, because I was always afraid to put so much more onto my plate that I wouldn't achieve balance. But in avoiding things, I actually wasn't growing. And so I now have the courage to say yes to invitations, both personal and professional. So my need to know things trumps saying no to things. So no as in KNO and no as in no, right? Of course, throwing something like this into the universe is a sure bet that all sorts of invitations will come your way. And sure enough, here you are asking me to be on your podcast. And sure enough, someone says, Rose, do you want to write something? So saying yes has challenged me to actually stretch and stress a little bit more, but actually to surprise myself. Saying no meant that I wasn't growing and I didn't know what more I could be learning. And the more that I'm saying yes to things, and sometimes a yes is just spontaneous. Sometimes it comes after much thought, but it's always going to have to be a yes for me right now, just because I need to push myself. And it's been exciting. I've been doing things I would not have done because people have just said, Rose, would you like to? Like I said, your podcast. Someone said, Rose, do you want to write for this? And say, yes. And it's like before, and it's better I say yes than my brother say to me, why didn't you not say yes, right? So it's better to say yes than hear it from him why I said no, right? So that's what I've been doing. And I would consider this my productivity hack. I really would. For me to be successful, I want to model what it means to learn. And what it means to learn is to stretch, to make mistakes, to push myself, to take risks. And if I'm wanting other people to do the same, then I have to. I got to practice what I preach. Again, my faith. I got to practice what I preach. So that's actually a personal habit that so far, since I heard Catherine speak, I've been saying yes to a lot of things. That scares me because who knows what the next yes is going to have to be. So
Well, thank you, Rose, for making this show a yes. It's been incredibly rich, and we're not even finished yet, but I completely understand what you mean. And and I think,
thank you.
especially in this business of, as one teacher put it a few weeks ago, there's never a finish line in education. And so there's always more that we can say yes to. And so we have to be aware. We have to be intentional, and we're better for it when we are.
So Tim, what's yours though? What's your productivity hack, since we're sharing?
Oh man, that's funny to have that question flip back on me. Well, I have a few,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess one that I'll share quickly is that I set very measurable annual goals. And so I make sure that they are quantified and they apply to every area of my life that you can imagine. And so I set those goals every New Year's Eve with my dad and my three brothers.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have either in person or like a 2-hour conference call, and we go through a Google Sheet all live in the document together. And so whether
Are they educators? Are they educators like you, or like where does this come from?
they are not, but these goals focus on everything from physical and financial, professional, spiritual, even, and family goals and all kinds of goals. And so I make sure they're all quantified. And then I meet monthly and I teleconference monthly about where am I with these goals. And that's one of the things that really propels me through the year and keeps me focused.
So you and your three brothers and your dad. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. But then he
Yeah.
makes time for you to have family time too, right? Like you're scheduled to meet each other.
Oh, exactly. And one of the things I like to do, I'm like you, Rose, in that I love to conference and coordinate and network. And so I
Hmm.
have a permanently repeating conference call event on my calendar with again my dad and my brothers. And yeah, so we keep that, even though we live in different cities, we keep that communication fresh. So
I think that is awesome. And so in terms of this year's goals, is there one that you could share with me?
oh my goodness.
Apart from what you blogged about.
Well, one of my goals, bring it back to your wheelhouse, and thinking of you as one of my inspirations. So one of my goals is to do a lot more blogging and to be consistent. I think consistency in terms of building an audience is really important, and you can't just put out a post one year and then go a year and then put out another post. People, they can't follow you that way. So I'm pleased to say that so far, so through the year, my goal has been to blog once from a personal perspective, so something just about life, and then once from a professional perspective each week. And so there are one or two exceptions, but I'm pleased to say that so far so good. It's going really, really well.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And I love that I can always catch it on Twitter though when you do post. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for reading and liking those posts. And my last guest, Rose, was of course AJ Giuliani,
I
who
know. I
put out
know.
that awesome 30-day blogging challenge. And so we had a chance to chat about, I asked him, why should teachers be writing? And so we've touched on more of those themes here just now, but I so appreciate what he is doing in terms of just empowering educators to write and reflect and share
Tell
the
your
learning.
story. Just tell your story and that will inspire.
Do you subscribe to his blog?
I subscribe. Yes, I get it in my inbox whenever he posts anything. Yes, I do.
Have you noticed that he's always trying to include story?
Um, I guess that's why I subscribe to him. I love storytelling.
There we
I
go.
love storytelling,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
and I think for myself I can go back to when I was a child, and it was the trips to the library. it used to be called libraries, right?
Mhm.
So and with my brother, and just going there and hauling as many books as possible, and then sitting with my mom and having a book read to us, like from storybooks,
Mm.
and then family time meant everyone just got a book, and we had our own corner of a sofa, and we just read. Like, I just devoured books. I had a terrible habit of reading backwards, especially if I had all my Nancy Drew. Do you know? I don't know if you know Nancy Drew.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I would actually yes, I would read the last page and then read from the
Oh
front and
no.
try to pick up clues. I know it's horrible. It's terrible of me, but I do know of other people that do the same thing, but it's all good connecting the dots backwards. But again, just the idea of story, of sharing each other's story, of that time where we come together and just listen to each other, right? I love it. Love it.
I love it. Well, we're going to have to put that on one of the future KV Friday Family Fun Night agendas, I think. Just family reading time. I love it, and I know one of my boys would be into that. Actually, my wife has been just inhaling books this year.
Oh, what?
She's been on a biography theme, so Mahatma Gandhi and Malala and Becoming by Michelle Obama, and right now she's on Born a Crime with Trevor Noah. So because a lot of these books are audiobooks, and Brene Brown as well. So she's listening, and so as she's playing it around the house or in the car, I get to hear as well. And I'll tell you, just listening to Trevor Noah's story in Born a Crime, that is a book I have to read myself now. So, Rose, it's time for your quick pick. So here we're looking for the education voices and resources that are shaping your practice and inspiring your thinking today. So we'll start at Twitter. Tell us about someone we should follow there and share why they've been inspiring you lately.
So my response to you was, where do I possibly begin?
Right.
I mean, every single the people that I follow, I'm purposeful to make sure that they're contributing to my growth and to my understanding and to my well-being as a person, right? So of all the people, and to put one name out there, but I'd like to say Antonio Van Dramen. And he's a district principal in Surrey, and I know that you profiled him before. I had a podcast with him, but he is exceptionally generous as an educational leader. He's a learner, and I call him a creative, in that I love how he supports and serves and celebrates his own district through social media. And then as a human being, just an exceptional person. I think he's so humble. I don't think he knows how awesome he is. And I think that's what makes him so delightful. I just love that he's so willing to share. He puts himself out there. Like, he hosts these lovely dinner night events for his district, and he always puts himself up as a learner as well. Like, he said, here's what I'm learning from today. They're so memorable. Like, he's like, I did this and I did, and he's just so vulnerable, and that makes him so much more courageous in my eyes, right? His vulnerability. And it's like, if he can put himself out there, then all of us can too. So as much as I may model what it means to be a lifelong learner, I look to him for the work that he does.
I'm going to second that pick. And as Rose said, I did feature him in episode 14. So go back and give that one a listen. And if you can't do that, make sure you follow Antonio at Vendramin, but Vendramin spelled, or the I is a 1. So that's the little catch there. But find Antonio on Twitter and make sure wherever you're teaching or leading in education, he is worth a follow wherever you find yourself. Rose, recommend a book, one that you've been reading lately, or maybe one of your all-time faves, and tell us why you recommend it.
Okay, so again, really just one. Okay. I think the one that I would love to recommend to all of your listeners would be the book that's being quoted most in my blog posts. And it's by the late Richard Wagamese. It's called Embers, One Ojibway's Meditations. And he's the kind of storyteller that I want to be. He's got this, of all the things I can quote, he says we should be spending time creating good words, good feelings, good relationships, and good memories. If that isn't what we do as educators, if that's not what we do as human beings in this world, I don't know what else there is. And it's just, and so I like to quote his book all the time. One of my favorite quotes is how he defines what it means to be a person. Can I quote it?
Absolutely.
Okay. He writes, "The miracle is that we are here at all. Life itself is our greatest wonder. To simply be is awe-inspiring. I believe this, just as I believe it's pointless to waste time chasing after meaningless blank, like fame and wealth and status. Better to spend time creating good words, good feelings, good relationships, and good memories. The grandest, most triumphant stories of our individual and collective time here. Creating those stories is a sacred act and all that we are meant to do, period. And I think so. Whether we blog, whether we tweet, whether we have a conversation, whether we're sitting there in a staff room, we're just creating stories.
So rich. And again, I missed that title. It's Embers by Richard Wagamese. And if you are looking to add the Indigenous voice, or an Indigenous voice, I should say, he is a great place to start. Are you a podcast listener? I feel like you are, Rose. If so, recommend, hopefully you are. Otherwise, you may not hear this interview, but recommend.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. It's true.
Recommend one
yes.
podcast that you've come across and tell us why you love it.
Okay, so this is more of a bragging now because I have to recommend the person who first invited me to be part of a podcast, and that's Jonathan Doyle, and he has something called the Catholic Teacher Daily Podcast, and I was part of his one of his very first podcasts, so I have to give him some credit and some kudos because he asked me to be part of it. He still has one even after I was part of it, so he's been successful ever since then. Awesome. So Jonathan Doyle. Thank you.
I'll take that as a good sign. And wow, I'm just thinking about, you said he's the Catholic Teacher Daily Podcast. So that there are a few out there who are managing to get stuff out daily. That's the dream, but we'll have to take.
And that's one of his 2 podcasts that he actually hosts, though, right? So yeah, he's a man who has much to share, and I'm glad that he does.
Tell us about a YouTube channel that you enjoy, Rose, and maybe explain why. We're in the age where, some educators are busy subscribing to different channels and others are sort of just walking into YouTube and searching for what it is that they want. But if there was a channel we should subscribe to, what would it be?
Well, technically it's part of her website, but the YouTube channel for Shelley Moore. You know Shelley Moore, correct? So everyone, BC Shelley Moore. Okay, awesome. It's her video series called 5 More Minutes. And then she's got a podcast that complements it as well. And you asked me why? Well, it's Shelley Moore, period. I love that she gives 5-minute moments of aha, so that you could take her 5 minutes into an after school session with a group of teachers or into a staff meeting or into your own professional learning time and just sit and ruminate with it. Like, she's so good at using metaphor, using humor to make a very profound statement on education. And then she's complementing that with questions for people to have discussions with. Like, her podcasts are great ways to ignite those conversations to help other people tell their stories. So it's Shelley Moore. It's her 5 More Minutes. I cannot recommend it more than that. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. That's fun. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
So good. Yes. If you're interested in particularly the topic of inclusion, get after Shelley Moore and make sure you subscribe.
Oh yeah, and that too. Sorry. It's Shelley Moore, for Pete's sake, just the person herself, right? Okay, go ahead.
Rose, the very last question is strictly non-educational. Now, we were talking a little bit off air, and you let me know that you're not a Netflix watcher, but what have you got on your PVR? What are you watching these days?
Okay, so I love everything between sitcoms and serials. So I love to laugh and I love to cry. So apart from actually really missing the whole CSI franchise, I was a junkie for that. I used to sign it for my students for homework just to watch it.
Miami,
talk
right?
About the biology. Yes. There's all of the series, right? Just because it's like we could talk the bio afterwards, right? Yeah, that doesn't really happen, kids, but it's fun on television. But my current faves have to be, and I just listed a few of them. I love This Is Us. I don't know if you watched that. A Million. Thank you. That's exactly the response. A Million Little Things. So both of them satisfy that need for me to cry, happy tears, terrible tears. I love Doctor Who. I'm very late to the party. I just started watching Doctor Who. with the 12th Doctor. So now I'm on to the 13th Doctor and really, really loving it. And I love reboots. I love the reboots of Magnum PI and Hawaii Five-0 and MacGyver because they bring me back to my childhood. And I think I love comparing that to it wasn't like this when I was growing up.
Yeah. Oh,
So those are some of my favorites.
going back to This Is Us, Rose, that's the show that my wife and I are slowly making our way through on Netflix right now. And I find I have to sort of psych myself up for it because it's so emotionally heavy. Like I don't know if I'm just a sad kind of a crybaby, but it seems to bring tears almost.
Yes, it really
Jack,
does.
right? He just kills me.
He's the kind of dad you
So
all wish you
yes.
have or want to be or whatever, right? Like it's
Oh,
beautiful.
completely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such
amazing.
it's lovely, and I know that they write to cause those tears to fall, right? But I
Of
think
course.
but in the end, it always comes together. There will be a happy ending. I have to believe this. I have to believe this.
Rose, this has been everything I hoped it would be and more. Absolutely amazing. And what a fun conversation. Can't wait to connect with
Thank you.
Yeah, at a couple of conferences coming up this spring. So what are the best ways for the listeners to follow you? And go ahead and tell us about these conferences, these great events that you'll be a part of.
So through social media, you can follow me, of course, through at RosePlay1 or follow my blog, which you have a link to. But in person, come and follow me to some amazing prodies that are happening. So we got the EdVent. The EdVent happening in April. It's the last day of April. It's the Tuesday, April 30th. And I think there's only 20 tickets available. It's a very, basically the whole bar is booked out for the event. So I think half of them are your staff, I think. It's good to bring your own cheerleaders. So that's one event. So EdVent, and I'll send a link to that as well. And then, of course, we've got the CAFLN Network Symposium, which is that same week in Delta. There's also the NOI Symposium, the Networks of Innovation and Inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing their symposium the week following. I don't know if I can stretch my budget for that long, and I got to go back to work eventually. I'll be away for 2 weeks on Pro-D. So we've got the symposium coming up. I guess your followers could always follow me to the next Ed Camp. I don't know which one is coming up, but there's been lots of Ed Camps. If you go to a TEDx, most likely I'm going to be there. I think TEDx Langley just posted today their speakers.
Oh, fun.
So if you look online, so there's TEDx Langley. You will find me at these places, guaranteed. So please let your listeners know. Come hear some great stories, have a beverage, and let's grow together.
Oh, so good, Rose. I remember connecting with you briefly at the FISA convention a few years ago when Daniel Pink was one of the keynote speakers. That's when you really came on my radar. You were lighting it up on Twitter and from the microphone. You were all over the place. And we so appreciate the energy and the hope that you bring to education in British Columbia. So,
thank
Rose,
you.
Thank you so much for sharing your time with the podcast today. You definitely inspire me, and I know our listeners are smiling as they listen. So take care, and let's connect again soon.
Thank you very much, Tim. I appreciate this opportunity, and you've spent a lot of time on your family day with me, but I hope you and your family make it an amazing day, whatever's left of it. I know it's this will cut the time right now, but whatever's come of it, but do make a good day, and I wish you and your family, you're both at home and at your school community, abundant blessings for the rest of this year.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much for joining me here today on the Teachers on Fire podcast. For show notes and links from this episode, visit teachersonfire.net. You can also follow the show at Teachers on Fire on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Medium. And again, please do subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm your host, Tim Cavey, saying goodbye for now, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast.